Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for being here. My name is Reverend Karen Bona. I am the manager of Tanenbaum's Health Care program. I am excited to facilitate the post-lunch fireside chat. So feel free to stretch, to move your bodies around. We are excited to be in the post-lunch afternoon piece of today's programming. I'm also very excited to introduce Reverend Greg Johnson, who will be informing us about caregiving today. A little bit about Reverend Greg. Reverend Gregory Johnson is a healthcare professional and an ordained interfaith minister whose work and ministry is focused on the world of family caregiving. He is president and CEO of Greg Johnson Partnerships International Incorporated. As a senior advisor to the CEO of Emblem Health, he created the renowned Care for the Family Caregiver initiative. After 25 years, he retired in 2023 to focus on two passions: international alliances of caregiving and corporate caregiving. You may be starting to see why he's here today. As an ordained interfaith minister, Greg formerly served on the staff of the Marble Collegiate Church in New York City for over 12 years. Honored by many city, state, national, and international organizations, Reverend Johnson was recently honored by Yeli International of Nigeria as a Change Ambassador for Peace and Humanity. Last but certainly not least, Reverend Johnson has been and is a family caregiver. His late husband of 41 years died in 2011. Their adopted son died at their home in Bali in 2005. Rev Johnson and his present husband, who is also his business partner, reside in New York and Bali, Indonesia, where GJPI Inc. also has offices. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I'm going to stand up just for one moment, and then we'll have our conversation. The middle of the last century, now it's not a long talk, don't worry. The middle of the last century, there was a young man who went to New York City from Wisconsin to do his graduate work at Union Theological in Juilliard. I was doing both of them. And I had the great privilege of hearing a man speak, a man whose passion and love for humanity was enormous. The sacredness of life, words that I had never heard out in Wisconsin at all. That man was Rabbi Mark Tanenbaum. Years later, I was to be privileged to meet Dr. Georgette Bennett, who is one of my mentors and very, very dear friends. And today I am particularly honored to be here and be part of something that bears the rabbi's name, that was so beautifully given to all of us by Dr. Georgette Bennett, and under the wonderful stewardship of our wonderful friend, Reverend Mark. Thank you for inviting me to share. And now, the way I begin, no matter where in the world I speak, I've come to say the two words that family caregivers rarely, if ever, hear. So if you remember nothing else I say, listen up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We are united in caregiving. I'm ready for the examination. Here we go.
Wonderful, wonderful. Ready or not, buckle up. All right. So, Reverend Johnson.
Oh, please, Greg.
Okay, Greg.
Yeah.
Could you tell us, please, how you got into family caregiving in the first place?
Well, it was a divine gift, quite frankly. I had graduated from seminary in 1971, and take one look, I certainly wasn't what the world was expecting from a clergy person. So I got involved with my late husband in the world of international tourism, and it wasn't until much later in my life that ordination came about. I was involved at the Marble Collegiate Church, as you heard. But family caregiving came to me in 1999. A very dear friend of mine, the Reverend Dr. Carl Flemister, the late Dr. Flemister, had been the chairman of the board after his retirement of a major health and wellness company in New York City. At that time, it was called HIP Health Plan. Today, it's known as Emblem Health. And Carl was the chairman of the board of the foundation. And Carl and I had been friends for many, many years. And Carl and I would have lunch, and we would talk about the things we were doing. He was very interested and very supportive of my journey in ministry because we both knew from the very beginning it wasn't going to be the usual road, and it certainly hasn't been, and I'm very grateful for that. But one lunch we're having, and he said, "Greg, I got something to tell you." And I said, "Yes, what?" He said, "We are doing something new at Emblem Health. We've spent a lot of time putting attention on the care recipients and on the professional caregivers, but it's time to end the silent patients, the family caregivers." And I said in my bubbly way, "Carl, I think that's wonderful, it's exciting, it's marvelous." He said, "No, I want you to do it." I said, "Carl, my background is theater and theology and international tourism. I know nothing about healthcare, and I certainly don't know anything about insurance. I still don't think I do." He said, "No, I want you to consider it." And I took a deep breath because I had been given the gift of a thought. And that thought was, and I looked at him and I said, "You know, Carl, I've never paid attention to this fact. But as a minister of music and as an ordained clergy person, I have buried more family caregivers than care recipients. If I can make a difference, count me in." So armed with degrees in theology and music, I go into the healthcare world. And it was the greatest blessing of my life because I came to meet so many wonderful people. And so we began the Care for the Family Caregiver Program. At that point, it was like you couldn't talk about the word. "Yes, you're a family caregiver." "Oh, really?" Nobody named it. "It's something I'm supposed to do. I'm stuck with it. I have to do it." All of those real answers. And so I began exploring. And they were marvelous. They allowed me to do all sorts of projects. And the first thing I said to them, "You've got to let me use theater," because I had been very active in the AIDS world, and Plays for Living was a wonderful organization, part of the Antoinette Perry Theater group, the Tony Awards folks. And so I called the president of that, and I said, "Look, we want to commission a play from you." And so we commissioned a play entitled, which has been my life story, "Caring for Me, Caring for You." And at that luncheon with Carl, he looked at me with all this time to think about it. And he said, "What would your mission statement be?" Well, my mission statement then, and it still remains today, is to keep caregivers caregivers and not create more care recipients. And there are ways of doing that. So that's where it all began.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm going to deviate from the script a little bit because our theme for today, as we've talked about in our preparatory conversations, is building community, taking action. And in the morning, we've heard from a number of really wonderful presenters who have shared about their own experiences building communities and taking action in this world. So I'm curious if there was anything that really struck you from this morning that you feel speaks to or has that you'd like to lift up as it relates to the conversation we're having.
I am so overwhelmed by each and every one of you. And I just thank you from the bottom of my heart. Because thanks to AARP, wherever you may be in the room, yet on Friday I got a call from Washington and they said, "Greg, this is exciting news. We're no longer 53 million family caregivers. We got 10 more million. We're 63 million. And out of those 63 million, 70% of that population work full or part-time. And this has always been one of my passions in caregiving. First of all, with Emblem, I worked with the employees, then we worked with the members, then we worked with the purveyors. But one of the projects that I loved, because I kept saying, if indeed these wonderful people, these family caregivers are at work, the last thing they have time to do is go and find more support somewhere else, because they work 8, 10, hours there, and then they go home to the 24/7 job that is theirs. And so often they're not allowed to be their whole authentic self. It was something you didn't talk about. Oh, I mean, I always laughed at Emblem because I always had a private office. Because from the executives to the custodial staff, they would all end up in my office in tears, and you'd meet somebody at the elevator. How are you? Fantastic. And I thought, yeah, I'll wait till you get to my office. I'll hear the truth. But it's true. There were these masks that we all wear, and I thought we've got to get rid of this. And so I did an experiment. I went to Emblem. I was always going to the CEO and saying, I've got an idea, and she'd say, how much does it cost? I'd say, it's going to help people. That was my answer. I said, give me 2 corporations that you have, and let me go in and do a program on family caregiving. Well, the first one I went into had 187 employees. 71 of them signed up for the caregiving class, and it never went down. It was an amazing experience. And so I knew that that was something that could be done. I saw miracles happening of people who sat together next to each other for 10 years and never knew the story of the other one, until slowly it was safe. And it would always become safe because I would be telling my stories and helping with people to get rid of the masks so they could be who they really were, and to share it in confidence and in safety and with enormous respect. So I have always had a very deep spot. And this morning I sat here absolutely thrilled hearing all of the programs that you have, because there's one theme that runs through each and everything you're doing, and that's caregiving. Because with every ERG at Emblem Health and BRGs or whatever other alphabet soup they have, what was one thing that united them all? United in caregiving. And it would help to bridge bridges. I have done it with clergy all over the world, where you couldn't get them to sit in the same room and talk. But tell me your caregiving story, and I'll tell you mine and this. And suddenly we had so much common ground. Well, when we have that common ground, we can begin to respect one another and move forward. And that's the story of our beloved Tanenbaum and why I love you so dearly. So when Mark, I may be going off script too. You've noticed I do that. I'm always shy, but I never found a microphone I didn't like. The truth is, when Mark called me, I was in Bali working on a foundation that I've been privileged to start in Asia. And we're in our 2nd year over there and have just won a major award. I'm so proud of them. They're like my little children. But Mark said, we're going to do this conference. And I was also extremely aware, because I've spent years in Washington and all the other cities doing advocacy and trying to get people to talk caregiving and talk. I'm going to go to this piece. I think that's important, because it relates to why we're here. There had been so much work that had been done, visiting Senate and Congress and all of that. And it was growing and it was growing. And then in 2022, AARP, once again, I love them dearly, came out with a fabulous study entitled Valuing the Invaluable. And that study said that, now we were 53 million back then, the value of those 53 million, were they paid and it monetized, equaled 600 billion US dollars. Well, the minute you talk numbers like that, everybody gets very interested. Yes, there we are. Isn't that lovely? Oh, you're so good. And immediately the government began doing, and President Biden signed many executive orders dealing with family caregiving. And then we were all invited, something I never expected in my life. I mean, I've been involved in caregiving since Rosalind Carter. And I'll go back to that. But Rosalind had started us on the world of family caregiving. But never did I expect that we would stand in the White House and hear the president tell his caregiving story. And that's exactly what President Biden did. And so these resources, this safety net, which is so necessary, began to grow and to be implemented. Sadly, that's changed. in this present environment. But my favorite passage in Scripture is always, and it came to pass. And it came to pass, and there are a lot of wonderful people who are keeping the knowledge that's been there, who are keeping these resources. I'm doing a whole list with some of my staff of people who have retired or forced retirement and what have you, and we're doing other projects together, basically to keep them involved and to keep them employed. But it's a major thing that needs to be. There's enormous talent. So when Mark called me in Bali and said, "Would you speak?" I said, "I would love to." Because unless, and you people have already or are already doing this, but unless corporations stand up and allow the word family caregiving to be part of the conversation within the corporation, you're going to see your finest talent, your finest employees, your great resources walking out the door because they got a call and said, "Grandma's just been thrown out of the nursing home." These are realities, and I don't come saying I have every answer, but I did put together 2 programs, and they're over there as suggestions. So what I thought, what am I going to call this? I love alliteration. So I said, corporate concierge caregiving, because it doesn't mean there's only one way. There are 2 examples over there, but as you can tell, I like the creative world. So I'm here to say, keep doing what you're doing. I don't have to preach to the choir, because any group of people who would be bringing religious tolerance into the corporation is already dealing with human beings who are physical, emotional, and spiritual human beings. And that comes up in all the work that we do in family caregiving. So I can't say enough about how important it is and how important the work that you're doing. And to me, that's your theme. That is the theme. Creating communities of care. And I'm offering you 2 possible action plans, but as many more as we can create. That's not the point. It doesn't have to be one thing or the other. It is, where are you now in your caregiving work? How are you using it to bring other BRGs together? And are we naming it? Which is the most important thing in the world. I talk on and on about this. When I see somebody at the store and they start telling me their story about caregiving, I say, "Thank you for being a family caregiver." We need to name things because we have to find them on the Google. Also, we need to know all of their many faces. And so I've created something. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I wanted to say that, now you were going to ask me, I think, to define family caregiving.
There's something really beautiful that happens when you put 2 interfaith ministers together with microphones, where the script just kind of goes by the wayside, and we rely on all of the work we've done to prepare for this conversation. I also did myself a disservice in the introduction by not sharing that prior to joining Tanenbaum, I worked for 20 years in family caregiving.
Yes.
So there's a reason that it is these 2 interfaith ministers sharing this fireside chat with all of you. But yes,
thank you.
Please tell us more about how you describe family caregiving.
Well, people always will say, "What is family caregiving?" And most of the time they think of old people like me, grandma and grandpa. Well, we're one face, but there are so many more. A family caregiver. There are 2 books that were written by one of my mentors, Dr. Carol Levine. It was her own story. But the first one is just fabulous. What is a family caregiver? It's somebody who is always on call. And secondly, what is a family caregiver? It's someone who shows up, that's the easy part, and stays to help. And when I'm talking to theological people or diverse groups of people, I always say, what is family caregiving? It's tikkun olam. It's Matthew 25. It's doing the next right thing. It's Ubuntu. It's all, or golden rule living. That is what family caregiving is all about. It's doing unto others what we'd like somebody to do to us. And I pray that will be the reality. So to me, the gift of being able to be present today, and I thank you again, Mark, is to be able to say this little program that I've created, which is very much based upon the work that I've been doing in Indonesia and several other countries, is based upon an 8-part series, which we had the fun of doing with Emily.
We did. And it was fun.
We took 8 weeks together and had 1 hour a week. And I said, if we're going to talk about this down there, let's do it. And it's a very simple program, but I do believe we always need to define words and be certain that we're talking about them. Healthcare, what is it? There are 3 actors in it. Someone who's sick, physical, emotional, or spiritual. And as we all know, if we're sick in one area, we usually are in all the others as well. There are the professional caregivers, from the highest paid doctor to the very underpaid home attendants. The third leg of that healthcare stool are the family caregivers. And that's both family of origin and family of choice. And we have our LGBT community in the AIDS days for thanking us. We thank them for giving us the term family of choice. You can imagine what fun I have when I go to certain parts of America. First of all, I'm a cultural experience. And then I start talking about this, and they said, how can I be a family of choice? I'm not gay. Well, you don't have to be gay to have a family of choice. We're a family today. I started a family caregiving coalition in my apartment building, 21 stories in New York City. I'm always saying, let's give it a try. When Indonesia came to me, they said, how do we take care of our older people? I said, you got a big challenge. I said, so the world is asking about it. We have 17,000 islands, 6,000 are inhabited, 3 of them have electricity, Wi-Fi, and other needs. So you can't go with technology right away yet. But it is something they have. Human capital. People. And when we train them, and that's why I created something long ago, and while I was in Bali, I retaped it, and the outline is over there. It's an 8-part series called Yana. You are not alone. Yana 2025. And it's very simple. The first thing is welcome to the world of family caregiving. Number 2, family. Number 3, the many faces of caregiving. And then we talk about, from the caregiver's point of view and the care recipient's point of view, maintaining the physical, maintaining the physical, maintaining the emotional and mental, and maintaining the spiritual. And then when I first taped it, I was doing it at the Marble Church, and I thought, well, I can't do the caregiving without talking about the one subject that America has so much trouble with, and that's death, dying, and grief. So number 7 was death, dying, and grief. And then number 8 was the benefits and blessings of caregiving. And I always say to corporations, you want people who think on their feet? You want people who can multitask? You want people who can face some of the most daunting questions in their lives and do it with equanimity? Get a family caregiver. Because they're dealing with huge questions. And they are perfectly suited, because one of the most important things we need to remember is we are family caregivers. We are not family cure givers. And when we take a deep breath and relax in that one, what is caring? It means being present. Mindfulness. Whatever's going on today, that is the situation. And we don't know what the story is for us or for any other human being. But this is the reality of today. And we need to be present for it. And right now, I'd say we're all okay. Nobody's hair's on fire. So we'll go to the next minute. But curing is of the professions for the doctors, for the physicians, for the therapists, for the clergy. And that's somebody who takes a situation, diagnoses it, and looks for a different resolution. And when the caregiver and the professional caregivers are in harmony and working together, each is doing wonderful things. Because who knows more about the care recipient? It's the family caregiver. They've known them for a long time. They know what their spirituality is, what makes them tick, what is important to them. And so we respect that, and we love that very much.
Wonderful.
Now, what did I know, yes.
Yes. Well, We have another slide on this, which is your fresh take on the familiar corporate term ROI. And I'm hoping you can share a little bit with us about that.
This is my favorite story. You know how CEOs are. I love them dearly, and I've gone through several of them at Emblem's lifetime. Well, we had one lovely lady. She and I actually did become friends. But all she ever wanted to know is, what is the return on investment? What is the ROI? What is the ROI? And my answer really was, I don't know. And I didn't say that to her. I would chat about what we were doing and blah, blah, blah. So what do? I started praying on it. There's got to be an answer because it's working. I could see the miracles happening. And yet it's a very proper question for a woman who's running a corporation. I've run corporations myself, but my ROI was, is there any money left in the bank? But it's not that different. And so one morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning, Spirit was speaking to me. And it was just so clear. I have an ROI as a family caregiver, and it is a return on intent. And my return on intent, and what is my intent? My intent is, as I said from the beginning, keeping caregivers, not creating more care recipients. Now, if I can do that, I can help retain the staff. I can help with the morale. I can help with the education, with the resources and the support groups that are necessary. And if I do that for you, and you're doing everything that you're supposed to, your ROI should be just fine. And you know, after I spoke with her, she never asked me that question again. So I have always been very grateful, thank you, for that ROI. Yeah.
Yeah, that one lands for me every time. There's a real resonance to the return on intent. So Greg has alluded to some documents over on the resource table. They're also uploaded into the Hoover app. I'm going with Hoover. And these describe the corporate concierge caregiving program that you've developed and are offering to Tanenbaum's members. But I'm hoping you can elaborate a little bit more so that when people read the resources and are deciding whether or not they want to avail themselves of your services, hint, you all do, what's it about?
Well, I tried to think, and basing it on how Tanenbaum does things, because it's so wonderful. I basically came up with two programs. One, basically, I've done both of them many, many times. But the first one is a program that one could do year after year after year. Because what happens, and this is something that corporations will find, I would do programs at Emblem, and you would see somebody come in, and you knew they were thinking about, well, down the road, I'm going to need to know about it. Let's see what this is about. And 2 years later, they walked in the room. They didn't have to tell me a thing. All I had to do was look at their face. They were in the middle of family caregiving, and they were having some real significant challenges. So it's a program that's based upon the You Are Not Alone series, which is spread out over a year. And we do one as an education piece. Then I always add in resources, and then some, as the masks begin to fall, we can spend a little more time on support groups because we are suddenly a family and we've created a caring community in which we're safe to be our authentic selves. So that was one. But there's a second one, and I urge you as brilliant, brilliant corporate people, within your corporations, you have an enormous caregiving resource, but it's not always easy to find. And that's something that I'm happy to do. And so the second program is something that I call 2 years, where I attempt to find, and they come, I just keep praying on it, and they show themselves to me. And they're people who have had a long journey in caregiving. It's over either because the person has died or the person has gotten well. But the caregiver has also come to a resolution on the journey that has been theirs. Because we don't want people to become constant caregivers. That becomes codependency very quickly. But someone who has come to the end of a caregiving journey, has dealt with the finality of it, has walked, as I often say, out of the labyrinth of life and that particular journey. Because I love Ram Dass's quote. What's our purpose in life? We're walking each other home. I can't think of a better statement. And Tanenbaum is giving us the blessing to do that again and again and again, because we all are doing that in various ways. So the second program allows for me to find those people within the corporation and then take them separately and do a train the trainer, so that they in turn can do the work within the corporation and carry it on. I'm busily trying to get fired. All of my life I've tried that. I want other people to do it. We need everybody. And often people don't even think that they have accomplished as much as they have accomplished in being a family caregiver. And so we need to take time and honor that. And also, as Mark began the talk today, which I so loved, it's an inside job, yes. We've spent so much of our lives out here. But we in this room know that when we go from I to we, illness becomes wellness. And that's the journey we're on, in love and caregiving.
Beautiful, beautiful. I'm interested in the idea that many of the folks who chose to participate in the summit today likely work in the DEI space in your respective corporations. And to my mind, many of you are the workplace caregivers. You're caring for your fellow employees. I can only see the faces of the people right up front, but they're saying, "Oh yes, that lands." And so it's beautiful to offer support and tools to enable you all to build a corporation of care, a community of caring.
Community of care.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it is that community of care. And we take the two actions that I have brought as a sample are these two. They're not the only ones. But what I am saying too is we cannot, and now all the technology people will look at me and say, "Oh, he's old." But we can't rely all on the technology, because there's something called the heart that's in it. And people need to tell that story and tell it to somebody who can hear what's not being said, even what's in there between the lines. But equally, we need to be able to provide proper information. And right now, we're getting all sorts of crazy information, and many things that were a resource may still be a resource online, but the truth is they aren't there. And caregivers don't have the time to waste doing that sort of research. And so in this time of great transition, there's no question about that, there is a way. Because long before all those safety nets and programs were there, people were caring for one another. It's going to require us to do some different things. It's going to require us to roll up our sleeves and say, "Well, I've never done that before." Well, I've spent my life saying that. So, we roll up our sleeves, and how can I help? Perhaps we could do this. And the more we begin to open the conversation, then he says or she says, "Oh, well, I had that experience, and this is what I did, and this is what I did, and that's what I did." And then the things that I love most are when people say, "And that was a whole disaster that I did." Well, at least that keeps me from doing that disaster. Because that's what it's about. It's that sharing the caregiving. And there are many resources out there. So I urge you, if nothing else, beyond saying thank you, that you don't despair in what's going on. Because you, above all people, have set the basis for caring. You've built a community of care. by whatever BRG, ERG you have put in place, whatever program from Tanenbaum you're doing. Now expand and name the caregiving. Let people know the many faces of family caregiving. It's not just grandma and grandpa. We're part of it, yes, but so are the children. And they're wonderful resources when it comes to making the computer work. Oh, you want to teach a child how to do caregiving? Ask him a question. Go Google this for me. I could have used that last night at the hotel. Nothing worked. It's all modern. Everything was QR codes. I don't know how to do that. I kept taking pictures of them. Well, finally I called downstairs and said, I'm getting very hungry. I don't see you have any menus here. They knew they had an elderly person. Anyhow, I got to eat. But I say it jokingly, but it's true. There's a place for everybody. The project that we're doing in Nigeria is with youth caregiving. Now, that's not my expertise, but I don't need to be the expertise in it. There's a marvelous Dr. Connie Siskowski in Florida here, who is the world's leading expert. So I said, Connie, here's a program for you. It's all of us sharing together. Now, you're all looking, that's for you to take home. It's qualities of the caregiver, and it involves a great deal of two things. The social determinants of health, which are extremely important. It's not the medical sort of stuff. It's the how they live and that sort of thing. What are the resources or what aren't the resources? And the second one is, and I love this phrase because I needed to use it in Indonesia and we didn't want to lose face. So I said, where we're technologically isolated. It means you don't have Wi-Fi or electricity. But it's also a phrase that some of my seniors in my apartment house have. They sit there with wonderful things. They don't know how to use them. So they're equally technologically isolated. So there are all these wonderful opportunities to care. We share it. And it's the reason that I feel so deeply honored to have had this chance to talk with you, Karen. And you and Emily, I had so much fun doing we felt that in order to do the Yana series and to talk about it, I said, why don't you ladies come and we'll do it together? And we did, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, and I just want to echo the fact that the title for your series, You Are Not Alone, weaves in so beautifully with today's mission of building communities and taking action, that sharing of the care, that creating of community is the action that we hope to empower folks to leave and be able to take, to be armed with compatriots of others who can provide support and resources. Now, you're not going to believe this, but we have time for a question or two.
Okay, let's go.
Are there
Does anybody have a question?
Questions, comments from the audience?
I have a question. How many of you have been or are caregivers? Yeah, I didn't think we had anybody who'd understand. I love it. Rosalind Carter, I never finished her quote. She's the most famous for putting caregiving on the map. And she started the Rosalind Carter Institute, which is now at the Carter Center in Atlanta. But formerly it had been out in Plains. And Rosalind has been known for this quote. In life, there are really only four types of people. There are those of us who are caregivers today. There are those of us who have been caregivers. There are those of us who will be caregivers. And like yours truly, with strokes and a few other things, there are those of us who will be cared for.
Well, and
doesn't leave anybody out.
And like Ariel shared this morning, the disability community is one that any one of us could join at any time. So you might fall into one of those categories now, but that might be different before you know it. Now, I do see someone with a microphone in the back. Go ahead, please.
Yes. Thank you for your time to talk about caregiving. For a lot of people who come into caregiving, it can kind of be an abrupt and sudden thing that they're thrown into, whether they want to do it or not. My question is if you were a caregiver who was thrown into it and you were like, oh, I never actually envisioned myself being in this position and I'm not really loving this new lifestyle, how do you sell yourself a vision to get acceptance towards being the fact that you now are in a position that you might not have actually seen yourself in, but are now thrust into and is going to be in a position for, a long time to be?
Thank you. It's a great, great question. The truth is, everything in life that we go through, it's my prayer that we grow through it. My life is full of many, many things and illnesses and that sort of thing, starting being born with polio, that I don't think I'd have signed up for. Maybe I did. But if we're going to just go into the poor me, we're not going to go anywhere. We'll probably end up saying, pour me a drink. But the truth of the matter is, that's where the personal conversation comes. There's no question when you say someone has been thrown into it. This will give you an example. When we first did that play, Caring for Me, Caring for You, Dr. Ruth has been a very dear friend, was a very dear friend for many years, and I invited her to the play. And when the play was over, she looked at me and she said, Greg, it's a wonderful play, but it has the wrong title. And I said, well, Dr. Ruth, what should it be? She said, When Strangling's Not an Option. Yes, only Dr. Ruth could say it. But it's teaching people, and you in your wonderful question really said it. How do we get to acceptance? It can be fighting, it can be screaming. It may take you with a therapist, with a coach, with a clergy person, because we're physical, emotional, and spiritual. And we may not truly understand why we've been through this. We have lots of things we don't understand till we look in hindsight. But one of the things that I have dealt with people who have asked that very question, first thing is I get them to, let's sit down and talk about who do you have, who does your care recipient have as friends, as neighbors? Oh, she was so terrible, nobody liked her. Well, it's a start. But you begin digging and finding, and slowly answers begin to come. And also we get into I'm a great 12-step person for 35 years, so I begin with a lot of one day at a time. This isn't what you planned, but you're being a blessing. That may be not the language that you use, but let me walk with you. At least you got one person on your team. And you begin to build that team. You can call me anytime. And that becomes the start. It's a small team, but it was 100%. I mean, this person was, they're caring for someone who is absolutely terrible for them. I know that story again and again. And yet out of it can come healing. Out of it can come understanding. Because all of us in life, if we're only going to go through it, we're going to come out battling and battling. But maybe we'll come to find that we're not alone, that there is a higher power, a divine spark within us that we haven't been dealing with. And when I can't deal with it, I know that there's a higher power in me who says you're not alone. And slowly we walk through it. And I have known many people who have been very less than pleased with a caregiving role, who went on to be some of the best caregivers in the world because they had to lose the mask, both the care recipient and the caregiver. And when they lost those masks, they finally learned that each was a child of the divine, by whatever name you want to call it. And God never made mistakes. So we care.
Well, there we have it. Thank you. Our time is up. It was fun, just as
It
fun
was
as you
marvelous.
promised it would be. Thank you all. Let's hear it
Thank
for
you.
Reverend Greg.